Welcome to another edition of College Basketball Net Profit. Friday, November 18th. Ian Cameron, Conor Mack. We are here ready to break down the Friday slate. Now, when we get to the new year in January, Friday cards are going to be very limited. But right now, at this time of year, November and December, it's a big slate usually in the non-conference before the new year. We got a bunch of marquee games to talk about. So let's get right into it. It's a good night of interesting games, bigger name teams playing. So let's break them all down. We'll start with Indiana and Xavier. This one tipping off next hour at 6 p.m. Eastern time. This is at Xavier, the Cintas Center. We've got Indiana 2-point road favorites, 142.5 the total in this game. I mentioned on Jimmy's show, I do like Indiana here. I'm going to take them on the money line. I just think they're further ahead than Xavier. Xavier, bringing back a lot of new personnel this year. The Musketeers. Indiana, on the other hand, I like the way they've played early on. Both of these teams haven't been as tested as much as they will be tonight, but I think Indiana, too, with the extra time off between games, something that will benefit them a little bit going into this matchup tonight against this Xavier Musketeers team. I do like Indiana. I also think this game could end up going over the total. You look at Xavier, 3 games, 3 overs for them. Indiana, both of their games have gone over the total. Both of these teams have pretty much shot the ball pretty well so far this year as well. Xavier, 7th. Field goal percentage. Indiana, 3rd best field goal percentage as well. I think what the difference for me is going to be that 3-point defense for Xavier is not good. Okay, that's where they've struggled this year, and Indiana's been lighting it up at 40% from 3-point range against a weaker Xavier perimeter D. So I think that's the difference in the end. The extra prep time, I think Indiana's a little further ahead than Xavier because they've got Mike Woodson there in year 2. It's now Sean Miller back at Xavier in his first year. I think Indiana, it'll be close. It will be competitive, but I think Indiana gets the road win. I think the game can go over the total as well. What are you feeling here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I think Indiana is the side as well. Real quick, I don't know if he plays. Is Jones, Kobe Jones, pretty good scorer for Xavier. Both these teams have lighted up, though. That's what I thought initially. I'm not like jumped on this crazy, but I think it could get over. Even if they're not shooting well, I think this can get over because they've been red hot, like you mentioned. Xavier, though, turnover team. I think Indiana takes advantage of it with the short number. I'd like him in. Jack Nungy is one of their better scorers, but so is Jones, and he'd be a big boost for them. But even if he's in, Ian, I don't know if they can get it done. So this was not crazy, but I'd lean Indiana and the over. I agree with you here.
All right, leaning toward the Hoosiers in the over as well, and I did bet both of those. The Rutgers, I was going to give out a lean toward the under and Temple in the game that just tipped off, but it's already tipped off. You can bet it live if you want, but I did lean a little bit to Temple and the under against Rutgers.
I'd take Temple.
Did you like anything there?
Yeah, I would take Temple. Yeah, plus the 5.5. I think they can get it done.
Yeah, that game just basically got underway like 2 minutes ago, right as we hit the airwaves. So that one's underway. Let's go now to our next game here on our marquee games section or segment, if you will, of the show, Penn and West Virginia. We've got the Mountaineers here, 15.5-point home favorites in this game. The total in the 143 range, pretty much across the board. West Virginia, it's always going to be, can they make shots, right, when they're favored by this kind of number? We saw them against in their first game. They were 17-point favorites against Mount St. Mary's. They won by 18. They did shoot the ball pretty well in that game, 28-57. They pummeled Pitt. Pitt defensively couldn't get anything going against West Virginia. And then against Morehead State, 19-point favorites, not nearly enough to get the cover. Heartbreaking if you had West Virginia. They only win by 18 in that game as 19-point favorites. But they are going to bring the defense. We know that. That's the one thing they've had over these years under Bob Huggins is a good defensive team. It's always, can they make enough shots in order to cover numbers of this magnitude? Penn Quakers, they've started off the year 1-2 straight up, although 2-1 against the spread. They did cover in a 7-point defeat at Missouri. They lost to Iona in their first game. They're 1-3 straight up, 2-2 against the spread. They lost by 28 at Iona. That was a brutal game for them. They just couldn't make anything offensively, 18-55. They lost to a very good, at least a solid, I think, Towson team, 80-74. And then they beat Drexel as 2.5-point road favorites in their last game, 64-59. Their results have been all over the place here in this one. I actually lean a little bit to the under. in this game. 143 and a half is the total. Haven't bet this game, but I do lean a little bit to the under in this one. Again, I think it's going to be just like a lot of West Virginia games, C-Mac. It's going to be close to the number. So it's almost like flip a coin as far as the side is concerned. What do you like?
Yeah, I agree. West Virginia, too, kind of towards the end of last year and early on, has been decent over team. They're 19-7 the last 26. Trey Mitchell, Stevenson, you mentioned that these guys hit shots. I think it's a flip, though, at this number. Penn, I don't know what we're going to get out of them. They have, what's his name? Jordan Dingle's pretty good, can fill up the bucket, but I don't know how great defensively they are. So, yeah, this is a pass. Can they get over this total? Maybe. This is one I just didn't love either way. So, yeah, it was a dead pass for me as well.
The one thing you always have to factor in with Penn, and it's often why I find myself, backing this Penn team a lot, but they've always been a good free throw shooting team. And right now they're sixth in the country in free throw shooting.
They're very good.
Yeah.
Exactly. West Virginia, too, has Purdue coming up next. So, yeah.
And that's a big game. So you always worry when you got the big game on deck, in a spotlight, especially when you're 15.5-point favorites. You got to win by margin. And sometimes you'll see, a guy like Bob Huggins might be careful with his rotation here tonight, knowing that Purdue game is on the horizon. All right, Florida State, in-state battle here with the Noles and the Gators. Florida 7-point favorites, 145 the total in this game. I don't understand why the total's gone down. Florida State's shown you nothing defensively. I mentioned this on the show today with Jimmy. They've been terrible defensively, Florida State. It's not like Florida's been – I think Florida with Todd Golden is going to transition more to a higher scoring team and maybe a little bit worse defensively, and they're trending that way. They didn't shut down Kennesaw State. They didn't play well defensively against Florida Atlantic in their last game, this Florida Gators team. They're playing at a faster pace because Todd Golden comes from San Francisco, where they wanted to get out and run and get out and transition. Both teams are suspect at the defensive end of the floor. I know there's that argument where, wait a minute, though, there's a big game rivalry here, Florida State. Now you're going to dig in, play defense. I got to see it before I believe it. I like the over, and there's no way I'm taking Florida State. I get it, but maybe you could say this line is higher than it would have been before the season because Florida State's just been dreadful. That Troy game was pathetic the other night for Florida State. Just awful. And like I said, defensively, they've been terrible. So there's no doubt you're getting a little bit of a bargain now with Florida State because of their struggles. But, I think this Florida team is improved. I like the coaching better. It would be Florida or pass, not rushing to lay 6.5, 7 with Florida, but I prefer laying the points than taking Florida State. And I do like this game over the total. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Shout out to the chat. I'll hit you guys in just a few minutes as people are coming in right now. I mean, how can you want Florida State right now? This team just is not very good. It's just crazy. They have so many guys out, or kicked off the team, injuries, and still I thought they'd be a little bit better. That Troy game was not good, and they got their ass whipped. Florida, you mentioned maybe not so great defensively. That FAU game they played, Castleton can fill it up. All I could do here was take Florida. It's just not, I'm not crazy about it. You meant it's a rivalry type game, so kind of keep me off early in the season. But it'd be Florida or nothing. And it is interesting. Maybe the total was a little bit high. It's come down, but this is better. I'd still go over. Now it's come down to 144 even. I definitely don't want it under here.
Yeah, definitely. It's two teams that are struggling at the defensive end of the basketball court. Not two teams I'm willing to trust right now to get stops. And I know the betting markets seem to think we're going to see these teams defend tonight. I got to see it before I believe it. Villanova, Michigan State. We've got the Spartans 6.5-point home favorites here, 130.5 the total. Michigan State has definitely looked better than Villanova. There's no question. And people are reacting to that because the money's come in on Michigan State. They nearly beat Gonzaga. They took down Kentucky in the last game. They've looked good, Michigan State. And they've been tested, obviously, by two excellent teams early in the season. So it's not been a team that's just, glided into the season. They have faced two of the best teams in the country right away. So they're battle tested, which is what you would think on paper is a good thing for the Michigan State Spartans. And on the flip side, here's Villanova with the loss at Temple as 5-point favorites. They were trailing Delaware State out of the MEAC at halftime at home in a completely brutal performance, honestly. I mean, I know they ended up winning by 10. They eventually got their shit together at least a little bit in the second half. But no, there's no doubt there's some issues right now. There's some issues offensively the last two games. 41 of 96 shooting in the last couple of games for this Villanova team. They've definitely struggled at the offensive end of the court. Can they turn that around here against Michigan State? So I get it. Current form dictates why Michigan State opened 5.5 and people are betting them up to 6.5. But think about the spot here for Michigan State. You played in San Diego on the USS Abraham Lincoln for that special armed forces game against Gonzaga. You flew across the country or to the Midwest to play at Indianapolis the other night. In that game against Kentucky, which was a spotlight game there in the Conseco Fieldhouse in Indianapolis there. And now you're flying back home to Michigan, to East Lansing here to face Villanova. I mean, you've had a whirlwind week. You played two big teams. You've been traveling all over the place. From a situational perspective, we don't talk scheduling spots a lot in college basketball, but this is like a tricky one. This is almost like that first home game off a road trip spot kind of for Michigan State. So based on the situationals, it's probably an advantage for Villanova, but are they good enough to me? So this is a fascinating game. I think it's a difficult one to bet. If you made me bet something here, I'd probably lean Villanova. You're probably getting a little bit of a bargain now on them because they've looked underwhelming the last two games. Michigan State's nearly beat Gonzaga, beat Kentucky. A lot of people liking what they're saying. And they do look good early in the season, but it's also why you're laying maybe more points with the Spartans than you would have initially. So fascinating game to watch. I'm excited to see how it goes, but I do lean a little bit to the Villanova side because of the value you're getting with them now. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Man, it's tough. This has not been good for Villanova. And we'll see how much, early on, you could already hear it, though. Yeah, Jay Wright being gone could help out. We know Villanova plays defense. They can hit their free throws. To me, this is under. If they want to be in this game, Ian, they got to play defense. So to me, still there's some 131.5 out there. It's come down a little bit, 132 even, like about an hour ago. This is an under to me. And Michigan State, man, they looked, better than I thought, too. In a good game, that Kentucky game, gritty. I thought they might go away. Even they got down quick in was that first OT by 5, came right back, took it to second and won. I think, Villanova just has struggle scoring it. They just, Moore won't be back till January, right? I mean, he's out.
Like people keeps telling me too, the Villanova people are trying to make excuses. Oh, but we're without Justin Moore. Well, and I know he's a 15-point per game player, but he's out till mid-January, Connor.
He's out.
You better learn to fucking play without him because he's not coming back till mid-January. So I don't want to hear that as an excuse. It's supposed to be Villanova. You're supposed to recruit pretty well here. Find someone, get the rest of your backcourt shaped up and ready to play.
Definitely. As long as Michigan State comes to play, I don't know how Villanova's scoring kind of over 60. So this is under to me in this game. I'm not going to mess with the side, but it should be a tight one. Villanova just lean on their defense because, man, they're trouble scoring right now.
Trouble scoring indeed. I don't think we'll see trouble scoring in this next game. Southern Utah and Kansas next up here on the marquee games list. We've got Kansas, big favorites as you would expect here in this game at Fog Allen Fieldhouse in Lawrence. Right now we've got Kansas 21-point home favorites, 152, 153. The total's gone up. I agree. I like the over here. Kansas is going to put a big number up on the board against a lot of teams, that are going to play with pace and struggle defensively. And I think that's exactly the prototype that we have here with the Thunderbirds here of Southern Utah. You look at their numbers here in the early part of the season, they're 113th in tempo, and they are not a good defensive team. And now they're playing, obviously, a Kansas team on Kansas's home floor that is going to pose a lot of problems, I think, for Southern Utah defensively in this game. Kansas on the flip side, you know what? Under Bill Self the last few years, we have seen this team slow down the pace a little bit. It's actually gone up this year. They've moved up the tempo rankings early in the season to 85th. Obviously, this is a team that's going to be capable of scoring points in bunches on their home floor. That should be no difference here. So when you look at this total going up, I would agree with that. Kansas, they scored 89 against Omaha in an 89-64 win. That game went over the total, and Omaha doesn't even play that fast. North Dakota State really struggled. But when you look at Southern Utah, scoring points wasn't an issue for this team last year. They haven't played anybody really of substance this year outside of New Mexico. But in that game, there was a lot of possessions, fast-paced game, which this game probably should be as well. And you got an 89-81 final score with 170 points in that game. Keep an eye, too, on the Tavion Jones, Drake Allen, and Fawcett here for Southern Utah. Those are the three that make their offense go. They're definitely one of those teams. They score, but they're defensively challenged. So I did like this over. My number's gone up a bit. I still like it at 153. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, I mean, Southern Utah hasn't played anybody. You mentioned the scores there, Jones, Spurgeon, all those guys, Fawcett. I think they could get in the 60s. It's kind of after that big win against Duke, just kind of go through the motions type game for Kansas. Just looking at like kind of the numbers, you think maybe they could hang around. I don't know. They're going to have to hit a ton of shots. Kansas wins here. Maybe go to the team total. I don't know how Kansas does. Should get 90, I think, here, or a little bit more. We saw Arizona get over 100 last night against Tech. So I think they get over, around 90, or you look at the team total. And do you want to lay the 21? I'm not going to, but they probably cover here.
Yeah, definitely, because there's a huge gap with these teams defensively. Southern Utah doesn't guard anybody. Kansas will. Kansas is still a very good defensive team. But this is not a great Kansas spot. They go on the road for one of those neutral court tournament games coming up after this next week. And, I do worry about that a little bit here for Kansas tonight, laying 21.5. I think from a spot perspective, it's definitely lean Southern Utah, but can they get enough stops defensively? Because if they don't, Kansas could just, win this by an 88 to, 62 kind of score. And there you go. It ends up being tough for Southern Utah. All right. Next up here, we've got, as we continue along here, a lot of good games tonight still to talk about. We got South Carolina and Davidson coming up next year. This is a neutral court game. Make sure you're aware of that. Charleston Classic. Davidson 2-point favorites here. 141 is the total in this game. I kind of like Davidson here. I think you're getting them at a buy low situation. I know they've had an up and down start to the season, but I'm definitely not sold on South Carolina. That much I know, and that's really what this comes down to. I know South Carolina got the win against Clemson, and I liked South Carolina in that game. I took South Carolina in that game, but that was more so to do with I didn't really love this Clemson team all that much. They got blown out by Colorado State 85-53 yesterday. Davidson ends up getting blown out by Charleston 89-66. But again, with this being in Charleston, that was like pretty much a home game for Charleston, but doesn't excuse the performance. Obviously, they were just ripped apart defensively, Davidson, in that game, and that's still definitely going to be the concern with them moving forward. But I think the big thing here that's going to be an advantage for Davidson, Connor Mack, is their three-point shooting, which is pretty good, 37.4%, and a bad perimeter defense to South Carolina. I think that is the difference in the end. Davidson takes advantage, makes some threes, wins this game, maybe pulls away, but I think they'll win this game, and that's all they need to do. So I'm going to go with Davidson money line here, -125. Connor, what do you think?
I agree with you a little bit. I'd lean Davidson. South Carolina just has been we know Davidson got ripped, obviously. The other night, just couldn't stop anyone. This total's interesting. You think South Carolina, this team plays defense, but they don't. Like you were saying, not at all. I mean, South Carolina State, that game, I watched some of that one, 80-77. And some of the other ones, we know Davidson can shoot it. You think this game, I don't know, maybe without these games, if this was like game one this year, it'd be like in the 130s. But because of it, even at 141, I'd only take the over and lean Davidson here if I were to bet it.
All right, lean over. I'd lean over too. They've slowed it down this year, South Carolina, now with Lamont Paris, the new coach, but they're still 150.
Davidson can't stop anyone, though. Both teams. Yep. So as long as shots drop, these defenses aren't great. I think it could get over.
Yeah. Oh, I would agree fully. I mean, if I'm betting the total, and I don't know if I will tonight, but if I were, I'd lean over the total as well. All right. Next up, we've got Boise State, Loyola, Chicago. Both of these teams last night losing. How about that? So this is kind of like a consolation game, if you will, in the Myrtle Beach Invitational down in Conway, South Kakalaki. Loyola Chicago won 1.5-point favorites, 127 the total in this game. Money's come in here on the Loyola Chicago side a little bit. We'll have to see about that. When I look at this game here, Boise State was just it's just one of those games. Nothing fell through the basket. I mean, 42 points. They played good defense, and that they do play. They are a good defensive team, Boise, but they just couldn't make a shot against Charlotte yesterday. They lose 54-42. For Loyola Chicago, look, Tulsa's playing a bit quicker. Tulsa's trying to be more of an offensive-minded team, and I'm telling you what, Loyola Chicago giving up 45% shooting in that game in the loss to Tulsa yesterday. They were -3 on the boards. 21 turnovers. That you can't do against a Tulsa team trying to play faster and get out and run in transition. That's a recipe for disaster when you're going to turn the ball over 21 times and treat it like a hand grenade. And that's exactly what happened yesterday for Loyola Chicago against Tulsa. You feed that transition game, you're going to get burned for it. You're going to pay the price. But I'll tell you what, we kind of hinted at it, and you especially did, Conor, about Loyola Chicago's defense this year not being quite that real tough, rugged, tough to execute against defense that we're used to under Loyola Chicago. So that's a little bit of a concern I have for them moving forward. I don't really have anything strong on this game. I know the money's come in on Loyola Chicago. I think people think that Loyola's probably still a little bit better team. They can rein in the defensive mistakes and the turnovers that they committed against Tulsa. Boise's a pretty damn good defensive team here too, entering this game. Total's been bet down. It probably feels like, look, Loyola gets back to better defense here. Boise's kind of up and down offensively. Kind of feels like it's a low-scoring defensive battle. I lean under, but man, 127, those are tough totals to still find that wiggle room to get under the total. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know if I get on the total, and obviously I waited. This has come down. Boise, just couldn't hit anything, and they'll struggle. I mean, this team just so far, it was last year. Obviously, they have Rice and Shaver. It's kind of just it so far for them scoring, but 22% behind the arc, 64% from the free throw line. But one thing you can hang your hat on with Boise is their defense, and I think that's one thing right now that Loyola doesn't have. I mean, Tulsa, I thought they'd be in the game. That's why I took the 8. I was kicking myself. I didn't take anything money line last night, and they took it to them. You know what? I think Boise's a better team. So in this one, I know Loyola's took the money. I take Boise on the money line. I think they bounce back. Could they be that bad shooting? We'll see. Yeah, Charlotte's pretty good. I saw Noli put that, and I like Charlotte. But I thought the game would have been a little bit closer. But to score 42, I think just because Loyola doesn't have the same defense, Boise gets in the 60s, and I think they win this one.
Good stuff. All right, next up, we continue along here. We've got a few more marquee games, and then we'll get into games that I've bet, games that Conor likes and has bet for the Friday card. We've got Baylor and Virginia, one of the real marquee games tonight. National champions, 2 of the last 3 years, Baylor and Virginia. We've got Baylor 4.5-point favorites here, 130.5 the total. This game's at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, the Continental Tire main event is what they're calling this. So we'll have to wait and see how the fan support is. I'm sure both of them will travel pretty well. And what do we get from Virginia? Look, we know for the basketball team, this is their first game since the tragedy that took place on campus, Virginia University. The shooting was just horrendous last week. To see that transpire, does that re-energize them? To galvanize them, whatever term you want to use, and they just go out there and they, try to, first of all, and I said this with Jimmy, that's something to consider, that, it fuels their effort tonight and their intensity. But at the same time, you should be wanting to bring effort and intensity without the shooting tragedy taking place, because you're playing Baylor. You're playing, a team that you look at as someone you're competing with for a national title this year. That should be reason enough. I do lean a little to the Virginia side. I kind of think this could be a sneaky over, because you talk about two teams that have been maybe not quite defensively what we thought, Baylor especially, and both of these teams, and I mentioned this earlier too on this Jimmy's show, they both are shooting the 3 ball exceptionally well, and neither team is defending the 3 all that well early in this. Even Baylor, their numbers defensively, 3-point defense, aren't great, and neither is Virginia. And both teams are shooting well from three. Of course, Virginia will give you 3-point looks because they play pack line defense. They clog the paint. They make it difficult to score around the rim inside. So they're going to give you opportunities to make 3-point shots. Baylor's got the potential to do that with Cryer, with Flagler, who it seems like has been there forever on this Baylor team. They're going to be able to maybe make some of those outside shots. And like I said, Baylor's 3-point defense has been a little bit leaky as well. Virginia's shooting the outside shot very well in early season play also. So for that reason, with this total being that low, 130, I'm looking toward an over, and I lean to the Cavaliers here, plus the points. What do you think, Connor?
Man, this game right here, to me, is just a watch. You talked about after the shooting with Virginia, they come out. It's here in Vegas. These games at T-Mobile. I don't know what you're going to get. You mentioned, though, both teams shot, but Baylor, one of the better, spot up 3 teams in the country. So that won't be good for Virginia. Just tough. I'm so high on Baylor. I think top 5 team, obviously. Virginia could make this. They need to make it into their slow game. So if you like Virginia, you got to lean under, because if Baylor's hitting shots, this could get over, like you mentioned. So this is just nothing I want to bet on here. As much I kind of like Baylor in the end to win, I'm not going to get involved. I want to watch these two, and I will. I should be going to the game. Maybe I will. Fuck it.
Yeah, there you go. It's right. It's right in your backyard there at T-Mobile Arena there in Las Vegas. And if you don't go to that game, you go to this next game, UCLA and Illinois, also at T-Mobile Arena. And this is a damn good basketball game as well. Looking forward to it. UCLA, 3.5-point favorites here. T-Mobile, 144.5 the total in this game. I like the Illini with the points. And this is not me trying to disrespect UCLA, but, I get it. I cashed with Illinois against Monmouth. Monmouth's no good. This will be a step up in class, but it's not like UCLA's been overly battle tested either. Both of these teams have looked impressive, but against light schedules, Eastern Illinois, Kansas City, and Monmouth for Illinois, and then UCLA faced Sacramento State, Long Beach State, and Norfolk State in their first 3 games. So I think when you look at it, though, Brad Underwood's recruited well. I like that he went to the transfer portal, got Terrence Shannon from Texas Tech. Has done a great job, 22.7 points per game already this season. The young freshman, Jaden Epps, has stepped up and played well for them to fill the void, because they lost some key pieces, from past teams, Kofi Coburn and Andre Curbelo. I mean, those are big pieces you got to replace here if you're Illinois. And to me, they look like they've done a good job doing that. So I think it's more of a reload, not a rebuild here for Illinois. They look like a really good basketball team to me. And to me, UCLA, I still think they're a little bit too reliant, at least from what I've seen so far, on Jaquez and Tiger Campbell. I think the supporting cast around them, I haven't seen it consistently from them in all 3 games. I've seen it in glimpses. I've seen it not so much in other parts of their first 3 games. I think cohesively right now, Illinois is a little further ahead, believe it or not, than UCLA, and you're getting points with them here as well. I get it. It's obviously venue related, closer for UCLA. Maybe the Bruin fans are going to turn out, but it's not like Illinois and the Illini faithful are going to pass up and turn down an opportunity to go to Las Vegas, of all places, to see their team. So I like Illinois here with the 3.5. I think it's a close competitive game, and you've got plus 3.5 with, honestly, the team that I think might even turn out to be the better team as the season progresses, Illinois in this game. And Noli sees points. I would agree with you here. UCLA is one of those teams that they want to play a little slower, half court, but sometimes they get the pace dictated to them by the opponent. And we've already saw that in the Long Beach State game. Long Beach wanted to fly up and down the court, and Long Beach got their pace, and that game went over the total. So I do kind of lean over, but I like the side even more. I like Illinois here, plus the points. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, I think there's points. You never know. Maybe sometimes these teams like this, you got to get into conference till you might see tight unders. But because these teams really haven't played anybody so far, so this should be interesting. I'm with you. I don't get why that's coming in on UCLA. I'd be on the Illini as well. I liked, especially the Shannon, like you mentioned. I think he's really high caliber, helps them out, who they brought back. Ju Zhang, you mentioned, is gone. Campbell's okay at guard, and Jaquez. They have Bailey, a freshman, a few others that have come in. I haven't seen enough. Both teams have beat up on shitty teams, but I think if you're going to give me 3.5 over that 3 in a game like this, I want Illinois.
All right, this is the final marquee game of our first segment here. Oklahoma State and UCF. Oklahoma State 6.5 point favorites. 133 the total in this game. Certainly, I think this is a lower scoring game. I don't trust either of these teams offensively right now so much. And UCF, though, has been much better defensively of late. And I think Oklahoma State still struggles to score points consistently going into this game. I think they're too reliant on a couple of players. And UCF has a lot of length. They've got a lot of defensive ability. And I went back and looked, and their track record as an underdog since Johnny Dawkins has taken over, and he's been the head coach now here for at least a few years here now at UCF. Their track record catching points, especially in these games against power conference teams, they've been pretty good in this role. I still think of that year they almost beat Duke. I remember in the NCAA tournament a few years ago, and they were that close. But they've got a lot of length. They got a lot of size. I think that's going to make things a little bit difficult for Oklahoma State, especially they're not always a consistent perimeter shooting team. I think it's a lower scoring game. And I think it's a close game. I like UCF here, plus the 6, plus the 6.5. I think that, and Oklahoma State, be careful with laying points with them because they didn't look good their first couple games. They did get right the last game against Oakland. But if you've been watching Oakland, man, they play zero defense, none whatsoever. That Oakland team is just abysmal at the defensive end of the floor. It's no wonder Oklahoma State had their best offensive game of the season against Oakland. Well, now they will face a team that will guard. They will face a team that will defend, that has size, that has length, that can frustrate them a little bit. I like the underdog here, UCF, and I like this game to go under the total as well. Conor, what do you think here, UCF, Okie State?
Yeah, I like UCF, the size, like you mentioned. One of the taller teams. I forget what number they are, but they've shot it well too. I've been impressed by them. I'm a little shocked with this number. I think UCF is in this game. I think they can win it, maybe even take a money line. And you mentioned, to me, UCF's defense is really well. Oklahoma State was a weird team last year. They kind of under, then they went up tempo for a while. They were on a bunch of overs. That they've been an under team so far this year, kind of figuring out how they're going to be. But man, I like UCF here, and I definitely would lean under.
All right, definitely leaning toward. You know what? We'll do the other game in that venue, even though it's not on the marquee game list, but we'll do it quickly here. DePaul and Santa Clara, which is also the Bahamas Championship here in Nassau, the Bahamas. We've got DePaul 2.5 point favorites, 154 the total. Santa Clara continues to impress me. They really do. I mean, I like what I've seen from them here in the early part of the season. They didn't have a good game last time out, but they started out strong. DePaul's off to a 3-0 start. They beat down Minnesota 69-53 in their last game. This is one where we should see points as well. Both teams will push the basketball. Santa Clara, I kind of like them plus the points here, far away from home. I think when you look at the matchup situation, by the way, there's a couple injury concerns too with Caleb Murphy, Nick Ongenda for DePaul that you're probably a little bit concerned about as well going into this game. I think when it's all said and done, though, when you look at Santa Clara, I think from an offensive standpoint, they might be able to match up and trade points here at a decent amount here with this DePaul team. So I like them as a little bit as a dog. And I certainly agree with the total here going up a little bit, 151 to 154. Should see points. What do you think there, DePaul, Santa Clara?
That's where, when I went through this game, I'm off it. I want to see more of both these teams. DePaul's look pretty good. Should they lean 4 here? Maybe. I kind of lean their way, but I think there's points. When I looked at it, I kind of lean to the over here if I were to get involved.
All right, C-Mac, let's get to your games, and this one especially because it's about to tip off in a few minutes. Tarleton State and Belmont. What do you like here?
Yeah, I'm on Tarleton here, plus the 4.5. I think they get it done. We just saw them play early on with Arizona State, and look at Arizona State the last few games. I was shocked, especially last night. The VCU game was kind of close. This Tarleton team plays defense. You can also look at this under. We know Belmont's the other way around, so we'll see who dictates the pace. But I think it's more of a Tarleton type game. So if Tarleton and this under, you got to take the points here. Belmont's looked okay, with Lipscomb, some of these games they've been involved with. But I don't buy them. I don't know how really good they are. I love the defense at Tarleton. I got to take the 4.5 here and lean under.
There you go. I agree with you on the Tarleton side. There is just something about this team. They make things difficult.
Gritty.
With that slow down pace, that guards you for the entirety of the shot clock. And they are a very good defensive team, honestly. And Billy Gillespie's done a nice job. That's the way he coaches. They frustrated Arizona State. And even though they lost that game barely 62-59, they contained that Arizona State team. We just saw Arizona State put up a huge number against Michigan. So probably makes that Tarleton performance better. And I think the thing that makes this too a good bet on Tarleton, because I think they're worth a look here, plus the points, is maybe Belmont's not quite as good this year. I mean, Belmont to me hasn't looked spectacular, not to the usual Belmont Bruin standard so far in the early season. So I think you might be on the right path here with Tarleton.
I agree. I love the points there.
All right. What's your next game?
Yeah, the next one I've been looking at, it's kind of like I might just split this here because it's Gardner-Webb, Wofford. I like the points here with the Gardner-Webb. I think they keep this. This is an 0-3 team that is not getting a ton of love. They just played North Carolina. That was that low scoring first half. I had the over in that one. The points just exploded in the second. It was like 46-43 or something like that. I see points in this one. I think this total's low. Wofford's gone over their last 5 dating back to last year. So is Gardner-Webb. I think it's 6 of their last 8 or something like that. I like that they played close to Colorado State, that 65-63 game. I just don't think Wofford should be laying this number. So I think I might just kind of split this one. I'm going to take the points if you can get 3.5, 4, and I'm going to be on the over. I think this total's just too light. Here you can get around 136 in this one.
I'm in agreement. It's actually on my card, Gardner-Webb, plus the points against Wofford. I think they're a little undervalued here. They've faced some pretty difficult competition in the early goings. I'm with you. Gardner-Webb here, plus the points in that one. Is that it for you with your games?
That's it. The other ones we already mentioned, the big ones.
All right, so I'm going to rip through my games, and then it's Q&A time. Now's the time. If you got a question in the chat, put it in there, and we will answer it to the best of our ability. And any games we didn't talk about earlier, we will get to them. As far as the rest of my card is concerned, as usual, as you'd expect, there's a bunch of games, so we're going to go through these quickly. Too many points, I think, for Ole Miss tonight against Tennessee Martin. I know UT Martin's kind of underwhelmed at times, but now you're getting into a price range with Ole Miss where I'm not ready to lay 20 points with them. Actually, it's down to 19 now. I agree with that. I'm on UT Martin there in that game. I like what I'm seeing out of Nevada. I thought the line was a little bit short with Nevada minus the 5 against UT Arlington. I think Nevada's got a nice squad this year from what I've seen, maybe even a little bit improved defensively, which has never been their calling card. But I like Nevada a little bit there, minus the 5 in that game against UT Arlington. I'm on Pacific minus the points in the over against CS Fullerton. Pacific looks really strong here in the early going. I took them the other night, and they won in blowout fashion. I like what I'm seeing out of the Tigers. I'm on them and the over against CS Fullerton in that game. What else? We got a bunch of games that have started already. Oh, Charlotte and Tulsa. We didn't mention this. This was one of the Myrtle Beach games. We didn't mention this. We only talked Boise and Loyola Chicago, but I'm going to go with Tulsa tonight. Plus 2.5 against Charlotte.
I like it a little bit. That should be a good game, though. Yep. Just real quick, that was one that's interesting to me. I just think it could be really good. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, it will be. It will be a good, and it's a pace war too. Charlotte wants to really slow it down, play in the half court. Tulsa, and that's why I kind of like Tulsa. Tulsa was able to speed up Loyola, and the half court defense of Loyola didn't bother them one bit. And now you're going to see them go up against this Charlotte team that's going to want to play them similarly. I like Tulsa there, plus 2.5. And to be honest with you, I see it as you get Frank Haith out of there. That's a positive for Tulsa. I honestly think they're going to be better coached here moving forward, this Tulsa Golden Hurricane team. So I like the Golden Hurricane here, plus 2.5 against Charlotte as well. What else have we got? I think most of the rest of the games that I like are all added board games. Georgia State and the over against Eastern Kentucky. I'm on Georgia State minus 4.5 and also the over in that game, 148.5. Georgia State, a very good offensive team. Eastern Kentucky, horrible defensively. Definitely a team that can score, though, plays fast. I like the over in that one. We mentioned Gardner-Webb. I like Fairfield, the Stags, a little bit, plus 1.5. I'm fading Georgia again with Mike White. My favorite head coach to fade. Bucknell, The Bison out of the Patriot League getting 12.5 against Georgia. I am on Bucknell in that game there, plus the points against Georgia. I'm on Southern Miss plus the points against Liberty. Liberty's not that team I like in the double-digit favorite role. Excellent defensively, very well coached, but they can go through scoring droughts. And Southern Miss has the kind of defense that could make it difficult for them to build a margin. So I like Southern Miss. I mentioned these two games on the on Jimmy's show today. I'm on Lipscomb plus the points and Lipscomb Notre Dame over the total. Notre Dame is not defending anybody right now. Lipscomb, good offensive team. They play fast. I think the dog hangs in that game. Notre Dame's 0-3 against the spread. They have been not good in this favorites role early in the season. So I think Lipscomb plus 13.5 and Lipscomb Notre Dame over 151. I like both of those. I'm on Bellarmine plus 12 against Clemson. Clemson's been a fade for me early in the season. I think this Bellarmine team's pretty solid. They can play some defense. Clemson relies too much on Chase Hunter, and there's not always a lot of secondary and third scoring options for them. So I like Bellarmine plus 12 against Clemson. I'm on Edwardsville, Fairleigh Dickinson over the total, high total, but you should see a lot of points, in my opinion, in that game. I'm on Upstate plus 4.5 as a home underdog there against Coastal Carolina. I think Upstate's historically been a very good underdog, very good team to take catching points. I think Upstate plus the points against Coastal Carolina is a good look. Someone mentioned Asheville, Texas A&M Commerce over the total, and I agree with that one. I think you'll see a lot of points there with that game. Asheville, Texas A&M Commerce over 145. I'm on Grambling State Grand Canyon over the total as well. And I'm on Texas Southern Auburn over the total. Iona, Vermont, Nunya, good question. That is on my card. I mean, Vermont to me always catching points. I'm interested in that, in my opinion. Vermont plus the 4.5 there. I know the money's come in on Iona, but I think it's gotten a little carried away. I kind of like Vermont there a little bit. That game might creep over the total. Iona's playing above average pace under Rick Pitino. Good offensively, sometimes a little shaky defensively. Vermont plays slow. But that's also why that total is 137.5. But they make up for lack of pace with efficiency on offense. They're usually very fluid. Other than St. Mary's shut them down, but St. Mary's a great defensive team. I think they'll be able to score enough in this game. So that game could get over that 137.5, Iona and Vermont. There you go. Rapid fire through pretty much my entire card, and it's a big one.
No doubt. You want to hit up these questions before we bounce?
Yeah, absolutely. Questions and then best bets, and we'll wrap up the show. Let's see what we got here. We will start with Nunya, Troy, -5 against St. Thomas. So I cashed a ticket against St. Thomas last game with Montana. And Montana, look, wasn't playing great basketball going into that game against St. Thomas, and they still drilled St. Thomas in that game. Neutral court environment here. It's the only maybe a little bit of hesitancy I would have laying the points. But look, they beat Florida State. I know Florida State's struggling, but you got to give Troy credit for looking impressive in that game. And no letdown either. You know, they played Merrimack in a neutral court game right after beating Florida State yesterday. They pummeled them 73-54. So I'm with you. I would lean to Troy. I just don't love laying 5 usually on a neutral court. But, yeah, I would certainly take Troy before St. Thomas there.
Yeah, real quick. I do not St. Thomas, the streaky. If the shots drop, they're kind of like in a game, but still, I don't love them. And yeah, Troy keeps last night. I thought it'd be a closer game. They rolled. So hats off to Troy so far.
Exactly. George Washington for Jake Burns there versus laying an 11-point number there in their game tonight. That's just a few too many for me in that game when I look at it. Maryland Eastern Shore, though, I mean, it looks pretty rough if you see the way they've started out the year. But I don't want to lay that many with G-Dub.
Real quick, I think it's a little bit too many, and I like this George Washington team. I kind of think that game could get over as well. I think they win. It's just I didn't really love laying the 11.5 in that one.
Maine and Columbia, says Jake Burns as well. Maine -4.5 in that game. Maine's a better defensive team. This is one of those games where who's going to dictate the pace here? Maine's going to want to slow it down a little bit. And Columbia, we know, out of the Ivy League, they are a team that usually pushes tempo, 30th in the country. They really aren't good at either. I took an over with them in Delaware State, and I'll tell you what, they struggled against Delaware State. And you know what? Offensively, they struggled against Delaware State, and the numbers bear that out. They're not a very good offensive team, Columbia, right now, and they might struggle here against Maine's defense. So I would lean a little bit to Maine there, -4, -4.5, and probably lean under, because to me, Maine wants this game to be lower scoring. So if I lean Maine, I definitely would lean under the total as well.
I lean Maine. When they're laying points,
Yeah.
kind of now.
Maine
I
Black
don't love it. It
Bears,
wasn't
yeah.
the top of the list. Yeah,
Yep.
but I think they are a little bit of the better team than Columbia. So I lean that way with the points.
Yeah, Alex Hills, I mentioned Texas Southern Auburn. I bet over the total in that game. As far as the side goes, look, Auburn, I've been trying to fade them as big favorites because sometimes I don't trust them, but they've been actually pretty good. They whipped Winthrop in one game earlier, and so I'm done fading Auburn as big favorites here, although this is a huge number, 24.5.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
Texas Southern just not very good
No.
either. That's why this is a big number. Yeah, maybe look team total. I'm not involved.
Yeah, they're usually better than this, and we just haven't seen it. We've got IPFW asking Robert Franklin about Indiana, Purdue, Fort Wayne here tonight. The Mastodons here in this one. I don't really have a strong feel for that game, honestly, when it's all said and done. I got to see probably more of those teams in particular, especially IPFW. Lean that way, but not going to get involved there. Did you have anything there, IPFW?
No.
Southern Miss, we mentioned that. I like Southern Miss, Robert Franklin, plus points against Liberty. Liberty's just not a team I'm comfortable with as a double-digit favorite. Not at all.
Okay.
And last question here from Nunya. George Mason, -3 against Boston College here. Boston College, Boston College, I think, could be a little bit better this year, but I don't know if I've seen enough just yet. I mean, they're off to a 2-1 start this season, but losing as 20.5-point favorites in their last game to the Maine Black Bears, 69-64, was concerning. They're 0-3 ATS this year. One game they don't defend, next game they don't shoot straight. It's been all over the map for Boston College. And this George Mason team, you look at them, I was disappointed when I backed them against Auburn. So maybe I'm gun shy that I don't take George Mason here laying 3, but that, I guess, kind of has me a little bit worried. I know they bounced back. They beat Longwood and American in their last 2 games. They won and covered both of those games. But I'm not rushing to lay 3.5. Although I will say this, they can shoot the 3 pretty well, George Mason, and Boston College early in the young season is not defending the 3. So maybe a matchup advantage for George Mason. I'm with you, Nunya. I would lean George Mason, but I thought Boston College was going to improve a little bit this year, and I haven't seen it yet. But I want to try to back BC at some point, but not going to tonight.
Yeah, I'm definitely not. Let's hit up this last one about the total Alabama, Jacksonville State. You have anything there, Ian?
Another pace war. It's a situation where Jacksonville State is going to try to slow things down big time because that's the way they play. In Alabama, 8th in tempo, Jacksonville State 282 in tempo when you look at this matchup. So who's going to get their preferred style of play? I'm kind of tempted by Jacksonville State, but to me, I think this is a down team compared to where they've been in years past. They've been a pretty competitive team in their conference, but I'm a little bit worried losing to Illinois, Chicago, and only scoring 60 points would concern me. And look, Alabama, we've thought under Nate Oates for as long as he's been here, they're more of an over team, but they've really played good defense so far this year.
Yep.
So far in 3 games, 54 to Longwood, 59 to Liberty, 55 to South Alabama. This has been a terrific defensive start for Alabama. And we just saw Jacksonville State. They only got to 60 against UIC. So maybe this does stay under the total.
That's what I'm thinking. Alabama gets to 80. Can Jacksonville State get to 60? And yeah, they haven't played anybody yet, but holding those teams, which are, in the 50s, that's kind of what I see in that game. And it stays under.
Definitely. I think that's something to keep in mind. He still needs some 3-point shooters. You're Nate Oates here. You're a good coach. How have you not gotten this team any 3-point shooters either? Still, if you're Alabama, once again, this is rearing its ugly head. They couldn't make any threes last year, and already this year they're 27% from 3-point range, 315 in the country.
Keep chucking them too.
And that's the thing. The 3-point shooting rate is off the charts for a team that doesn't make as anything close to when you shoot threes at the volume they do, you're supposed to be shooting better than 27%, and yet they keep on forcing them. It's the damnedest thing. We saw it last year quite a bit, and we're seeing it again so far early this season from Alabama. Merrimack, no, I'm not interested in the Merrimack side in that game tonight. The under is always interesting. I do like the under, but I think Montana, actually, it's a tough scheduling spot for the Grizzlies. I actually think laying the 10 is the way to go with Montana in that game. Duke. Certainly Duke off the loss, back home, maybe wanting to whip somebody's ass at Cameron Indoor Stadium tonight. I could see them maybe putting a hurting tonight on Delaware in that game. I don't think Delaware's is as good this year either. So, yeah, Duke laying the points. It's not something for me that I rarely lay this kind of number with Duke, but I think spot-wise, there is some reason to maybe lay it with Duke tonight.
Yeah, it's just moved. It's 3 points. So at this point, I'll just stay off.
All right, there we go. All right, there we go. We got through the Q&A in the chat. We appreciate it. Hit the like button. 103 live viewers. Hit that like button. We appreciate it very much. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Noli knows liking the under there in that Duke Delaware game.
Shout out to the chat.
Absolutely great stuff. Anyone that missed a game earlier in the show, or if you missed, Oklahoma State, UCF, we hit it earlier in the show. I'm on UCF plus the points. Smaller opinion on the under. I think Conor Mack in the same boat with that game as well. So if you missed any of the show, it's archived. You can check it out after the fact. And we've got Friday night live bet stream tonight. Make sure you keep that in mind with Dabby Cab and Razor Sharp picks. Make sure you join them for the live bet stream tonight on a Friday night. Lots of fun with that. We appreciate it for sure. Morgan State. Morgan. Someone asking. Well, right. I'm in a good mood. It's a Friday. I'll give you this last question here. Morgan State and Utah Valley. I wanted to back Utah Valley. I just didn't want to lay 10 on a neutral court here in Montego Bay. But I'm not really all that impressed so far early in the season with Morgan State at all. And bit of a class difference. So, and I like the way Utah Valley played great against Wake Forest earlier this week. Hell of an effort in that game against Wake. Yeah. So I wanted to take Utah Valley, but just didn't want to lay that many points.
I agree. Real quick before we hit the best bet from Robert, the line's just gone too far down, on that total. It's just dropped like 7 or 8 points or something like that. So
you can understand why, though. Cleveland State, sketchy offensively, slow-paced team. And Pine Bluff, they've had years where they've played very fast, and they still play above average tempo, but they cannot score. 327 offensive efficiency ranking in the country. Not good. So, the under taking money, it's probably the right call there with the totals move. Yeah. All right, we've got best bets coming up right after we hear from our great sponsors, Southtown 101 and Manscaped. All right, Southtown 101. When you're in San Antonio, Texas, stop in. Great food, drinks, live music, DJs, karaoke. Manscaped.com, promo code PubSports, 20% off your purchase. Lawnmower 4.0, any Manscaped product at 20% off using promo code PubSports. All right, it's been a big week. A lot of games. Everything's going on right now. NFL, college football, NBA, college basketball, NHL, and more. A lot of shows, and I'm thankful that this is the last show for the week, although, of course, Conor and I are back tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time with the College Football Pub-Up Show. And I believe our entire crew is going to be back Saturday morning. Me, Conor, and joined by Big Ragu and a returning DJ Big Boss as well to break down the college football slate for Saturday tomorrow morning at our usual time. That'll be a lot of fun for sure. All right. Hopefully we'll have some fun cashing a couple of best bets tonight for in college basketball. Conor Mack, what do you like for best bet?
let's give out a couple. I'm gonna try to hit up in the chat. Last year I tried to give a few more than normal instead of just one. You like one, or do you want more? I'll give another two tonight. Hopefully you can win them. UCF, Ian, we're both on it. I'm taking money line as well, a little bit as well. It's plus 215. I wanted the Tarleton game, but we, had tipped off, but we talked about it. And I'm on Nova, Michigan State, under 232 and a half. Get it. Stays under.
All right, there we go. Best bets. A couple of them there for Conor Mack on this Friday college basketball card. My best bet for the Friday card, we're getting on a little bit of a roll here. We had Wake Forest on last Friday against Georgia. We cashed the best bet winner with the, I think it was an over in the on Wednesday night. No, it was Towson. Sorry,
we're gonna get hot. We're getting hot
yesterday. Towson money line against Wilmington, and Towson money line against Greensboro. They got off to a horrible start. But they battled all the way back. They won that game. So we're getting a nice little run together here with the best bets on the show. I try to keep it rolling tonight. And let me see what we can come up with here. I want to make sure I give you something where the line hasn't moved too much. And that's always the risk you have, at this time of the day. But let's go with Eastern Kentucky, Georgia State over 149.5. I'll give you two. I'll give you Eastern Kentucky, Georgia State over 149.5. I think there's a lot of points in that game. And I'm also going to give you Illinois plus the points against UCLA. Illinois plus 3.5 against UCLA. So there you go. One side, one total, hopefully a 2-0 sweep with best bets here for this Friday college basketball card. All right, that'll wrap things up for this edition of the show. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Hit the like button on the way out. We appreciate that. And a reminder, we got Dabby Cab and Razor Sharp coming up with their live bet stream here tonight on Pub Sports Radio. And reminder, we're back with the College Football Pub Hub. Conor and I tomorrow morning with Big Ragu and DJ Big Boss at 10 a.m., getting you ready for a huge Saturday in college football. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Hit the like button on the way out. Let's make it official at +4. You're right. There are some +4s now available on Illinois. So +4 against UCLA for that best bet. Great stuff. Great week of shows. Next week, we're going to be on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday with Net Profit. Thursday, Friday, it's U.S. Thanksgiving. Doubt we do shows those 2 days because of the holiday, but we will be on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 3 days next week, 5 p.m. Eastern with college basketball Net Profit. So looking forward to next week being back with you. We're going to have the Maui Invitational next week. Tons of great neutral court tournaments.
I love this time of year. And we're back. It's back to normal after 2 years of the pandemic bullshit and everything else. So,
and the schedule got blown up. Exactly. Now we got the neutral court tournaments back in full force. Wall-to-wall college hoops the next week or so, week to 2 weeks, day and night. So always a good thing, no doubt about it. For Conor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. Let's have a great Friday night. Enjoy the games and good luck. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning. College Football Pub Hub right here on Pub Sports Radio.